keep those plaque ideas coming in. Our message board address is bbc.co.uk/culture show. The weirder the better. Now, speaking of weird, nobody does it quite like film director David Lynch. So when we heard that a major exhibition of his artwork was opening in Paris, we were fascinated. Could his art give us a clue to the inner workings of the Lynch mind? Andrew Graham-Dixon went to find out.
David Lynch's latest film, Inland Empire, has just opened in the centre of Paris. But before this latest excursion into a Lynchian reality, before the surreal psychological thriller Mulholland Drive, before his cult TV hit Twin Peaks, before the psychotic, twisted world of Blue Velvet, and before the post-industrial nightmare, Eraserhead, David Lynch was a painter. But even when Lynch became a filmmaker, he never stopped making art. I arrived at the Cartier Foundation, where Lynch's first major retrospective as a fine artist, covering 40 years, was being installed. What's on display is like a set of storyboards, telling the enigmatic tale of a hyperactive, if not quite tormented psyche belonging to one David Lynch. The spectrum of work includes a series of densely textured, provocative paintings. Some appear to be set in Lynchian living rooms. There are hundreds of drawings and photos and images that have a distinctly Francis Bacon feel to them. There are Lynch doodles on post-its, inside covers of matchbooks, and a surreal series of digitally manipulated images of Victorian period nudes. One particular postcard-sized drawing has been converted by Lynch into three-dimensional reality. Welcome to the world of David Lynch.
David.
Andrew.
How nice to see you.
Good to see you, Andrew.
In an appropriately surreal setting. When you paint, is that when you don't have a movie on the go, or are you able to sustain both types of activity at the same time?
I am not able to sustain both. There's this expression, keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole. In other words, focus on that thing that you're working on. In between, before the ideas come for the next film, beautiful time to fall into the world of paint or photography or music or whatever.
Francis Bacon once said that his paintings would come to him sometimes as images in dreams. And then there would be the reality of going into the studio and trying to wrestle that image that was an image in a dream into a real painting. I mean, is the process for you in any way similar to that?
It's exactly that, except it doesn't come from a dream. Very few things for me come from a dream. But the idea is like a dream. The idea comes into your mind. There it is.
Lynch's DIY approach to surrealism is expressed in a rather unsettling series of digitally distorted erotic photographs from the 19th century. Some of these images could almost be scenes from the films Eraserhead or Elephant Man.
Photoshop is the greatest program. What you realize, it's a tool, you can do what you think.
I noticed a series of photographs of snowmen.
I'm going through an old area in Boise, Idaho, and I'm noticing these snowmen, and nature had started, taking them away. Reminded me of aliens.
To me, they're sort of visible evidence of the fact that all kinds of people who don't necessarily think that they're artists, but actually these people are artists, and they're making one sculpture a year, and it just happens to be a snowman.
Beautiful, Andrew. There's artists everywhere.
For Lynch, the transition from artist to filmmaker began in 1966. Lynch produced his first stop-action animation called 6 Men Getting Sick. This installation has been designed by Lynch. You get the feeling these curtains might have been used in a Twin Peaks dream sequence. Many of his pictures take the form of ill-defined existential landscapes. There's a Lynchian everyman character named Barb who inhabits these mindscapes. The pictures have titles like Rock with 7 Eyes, it looks back at you from what looks like a mound of primal sludge.
It's really about, I guess, a dance of one texture to another, and I call them fast and slow areas. You know, a fast area is a busy area, and a slow area is there's not a lot happening.
As David Lynch and I were talking, I became transfixed by those hand gestures. Was he typing out some form of aerial braille? Or was he playing some musical instrument that only he could see and hear? His gestures are incredibly kinetic.
You've written a lot about meditation and how it helps you in your life and how it gives you this peace and tranquility. And yet, for many people, your work remains associated with darkness and violence.
Right.
And I think people are quite intrigued by that counterplay.
Exactly. The goal, I think, of all legitimate meditations is to unfold the full potential of the human being. And the key to rapid unfoldment of the full potential is experiencing the deepest level of life. But how come my work is so dark? It's got darkness, it's got the human conditions, it's got lots of torment and suffering, but as you learn, the artist doesn't have to suffer to show suffering. When you get a technique that allows you to dive all the way within and experience that ocean, freedom comes. Whoa!
I think somebody who watches Eraserhead, they might think that you must have been in some kind of dark night of the soul, but were you actually, not in a terrible state when you made that movie?
Well, I was in the dark night of the soul. That's when I started meditating.
Lynch's films can mesmerize with smoke and flames. A flickering light, which seems to have been caused by some cosmic electrical short, is a recurring motif. And given the sheer diversity of Lynch's artworks, I couldn't resist asking him this.
Do you have any sort of personal favourites among them? I mean, if an electrical fire were to break out in the Fondation Cartier right now, are there 3 or 4 that you'd rush to save?
Well, I try to save the bunch. There's...
I wonder, is he thinking hard about which works to save? Or how not to answer my question, for fear that his personal preference might reveal too much?
Based on what you're saying, I'm going to add to the installation here a flame retardant suit. And I'm going to save everything, Andrew.
Andrew Graham-Dixon's here with me now. Welcome, Andrew.
Hi.
So look, you're an art critic. You know about these things. What did you make of David Lynch's art?
Well, I'm a David Lynch fan. I think anything that he does I'd find interesting, but I really liked his pictures. I like their sort of strange use of mixed media. They have a kind of Eraserhead feel to them. They're populated by these strange little creatures. They're like a little series of telegrams from the inside of his brain.
Well, that's quite interesting, because last time we had a discussion about this type of thing, you had a bit of a go at Brian Eno for his similar kind of diversification from music to art.
Well, I think in David Lynch's case it's different, because he's not diversifying. I think making art for him is almost often a form of storyboarding. Some of his photographs you could imagine being the starting point for a film. Everything is part of everything else. I'm going to sound like him. He talks about the organic phenomenon of being David Lynch, but I think it really is true.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks very much. And if you want to see David Lynch's artwork for yourself, you'll have to go to Paris, where that exhibition runs until May the 27th. Now, in a moment, we'll be finding out Mark Kermode's verdict on Lynch's latest film, Inland Empire. But if music's more your bag, then you might want to pay a visit to the Barbican. To celebrate their 25th anniversary, they're devoting a whole season to the music.